Hearing on public questions for the November 6, 2018 special city meeting ballot. First item on the agenda is the agenda. Is there a motion on the agenda? Moved. The agenda is moved by Councilor Paul. Is there a second? Second by Councilor Hartnett. We have any discussion on the agenda? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? We have our agenda passed unanimously. The second item, which was what we are here for, is if there are any public questions on the two ballot items, and that is dealing with the $70 million bond for the schools and also the stormwater discharge issue, $30 million wastewater bond. Any member of the public who would like to speak to us or ask us a question about these issues? Hearing none. Going once, going twice.
Point of information.
Councilor Busher, what's your point of information?
This meeting is slated from 5 to 5:45. So I'm wondering what legally we need to do. Is your intent to leave someone present in the room until 5:45? Or are you intending to, after 10 minutes or so, adjourn the meeting?
That is a good point, Councilor Busher. Because that's true. Someone could come in. They aren't here to start the meeting, but it is scheduled to go to as late as 5:45. We have Board of Finance at 5:45. I guess we'll wait for a little bit and see if anyone shows up. Councilor Busher.
So without legal, well, we do have legal representation, but he's from the schools. No, he's financial. Never mind. Sorry. Sorry.
We do have someone from the city attorney's office.
Oh, we do. So excuse me, but I think the intent is to have someone available from, Mr. President, I think the intent is to have somebody here to field the questions, or at least hear the questions from the public. I believe that the council as a whole or in part doesn't really need to be present as long as this room is available until 5:45. So could staff be designated to hear any of those concerns and then forward them to the council?
I know we do. We do. Hold on. I know we do not need a quorum. Councilor Hartnett.
I would say, if that's the case, I nominate Councilor Busher to stay till 5:45.
Well, I mean, I'm going to be staying. I'm going to be staying here till the time anyway. So.
All right. Well, I was just wondering.
So we can, councilors. I think councilors, if you want to stay for a few minutes or not, you can leave. I'm going to be here anyway, and we'll wait and see. But.
All right. Can we recess?
I think we can recess because there's no member of the public here.
Yeah, until
so
someone comes in.
let's recess the council unless and until someone from the public shows up. So the council's in recess. Good evening. I would like to convene this regular meeting of the City Council tonight at 7:15, and would you all please join with me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance
To the flag, United States of America, and to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And now, before I recognize Councilor Nodell on the agenda, I would like to take a moment. 2 days ago, we had a horrific event in Pittsburgh, shooting and murder of 11 people in the Tree of Life Congregational Synagogue in Pittsburgh. An absolutely horrific event, and I would like to take a moment to think about the victims and send our sympathies to the victims and the entire city of Pittsburgh. So a moment of silence, please. Thank you. And let's hope that this country can find its way forward through all these horrific events that we keep seeing, and that we here in Burlington can continue to do a job in a positive way and stay away from rhetoric that might lead to or might assist in these people thinking these things are okay to do. Now on to the agenda. Is there a motion on the agenda? Councilor Nodell.
President Wright, I move, excuse me.
Mayor wanted something.
Oh, Mr. Mayor.
President Wright, thank you. I apologize. We didn't get a chance to fully coordinate this ahead of time, but I did just thank you for those thoughtful remarks and for making sure that this moment didn't go without note here at the City Council. I do just would like, with your permission, just to add very quickly that one of the elements of this event is that I think it has shaken the Jewish community throughout the country, throughout the world, certainly in this community. And there is going to be an event in recognition of that here in Burlington, in Contoys, in fact, tomorrow night from 5:30 to 7:30. And wanted to make sure that the council and the community was aware that that would be that further acknowledgement and processing of this terrible event.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I apologize for not having seen that, and thank you for alerting us to that event tomorrow. Councilor Nodell.
Yes, President, I would move to amend and adopt our agenda as follows. To note the corrected version of consent agenda item 3.15, which is a communication from the board clerk of the Board of Electric Commissioners regarding the Electric Commission attendance record per Councilor Busher. Note the commission report certification for consent agenda item 3.16, a report from the Cemetery Commission, and a report, again, per Councilor Busher. Remove from the consent agenda item 3.21, which was a communication from there about Councilor's participation in community stat, per Chief of Staff Riddell.
Thank you, Councilor Nodell. Seconded by Councilor Busher. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving the agenda as amended by Councilor Nodell, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We have our agenda. Item number 2 is a public forum, with time certain of 7:30, so we will move to a couple of other items first. And I am going to recess the regular meeting of the City Council to convene the meeting of the Liquor Control Committee. And so, first item on the agenda is the agenda. Commissioner Dean.
Thank you, Commissioner Wright. I would move to adopt our agenda.
Second. Moved by Councilor Dean, seconded by Councilor Roof. All in favor of the agenda, please say aye.
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 Opposed? We have approved the agenda. Second, item number 2 is a consent agenda. Commissioner Dean.
Thank you, Commissioner Wright. I'd move to adopt the consent agenda, taking the actions as indicated.
Second. moved and seconded by Councilor Roof. Discussion on the consent agenda? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda and taking the actions indicated, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We have unanimously passed the consent agenda. And item number 3, deliberative agenda, Commissioner Dean, is 3.01.
Thank you.
First-class liquor license. I'll let you take it from there.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Wright. I will move to approve the 2018-2019 first-class restaurant bar liquor license application for BDM Enterprises LLC, doing business as Orlando's Bar and Lounge, with the following conditions. All city permits need to be closed out, contingent upon fire marshal approval, with all standard conditions, and a special condition: no partner on the license shall be convicted of a misdemeanor or felony criminal charge. If any partner of the license is convicted of a misdemeanor or felony criminal charge, BDM shall be subject to an immediate suspension revocation hearing before the local control subcommittee. If any partner on the license receives a misdemeanor or federal felony criminal charge, BDM Enterprises must disclose the criminal charge to the local control subcommittee within 14 days of the charge. These conditions apply to their first-class restaurant, bar, restaurant liquor license application, their outside consumption permit application, and their indoor entertainment permit application. And after a second, I would request the floor back for a few comments.
Seconded by Councilor Roof. Commissioner Dean, you have the floor back.
So I'd like to just take a moment to give the full commission a view into what were our deliberations at the committee level. First, a note about the application that this is for the Magnolia space at Lawson Lane, with a young group of entrepreneurs who have significant experience with this type of business in music, food, and club operations. And their intent is to open a business that's geared toward an older, more mature audience, focused on acoustical music, arts and culture, and food, which is at the center of their experience. So I will say that the history of the past offenses that were given to us in the application were the central focus of an extended discussion among the committee members, and with the city attorney's office providing input and guidance in our discussions. I will note that the attending partners were forthcoming, acknowledged their past offenses, and provided additional background information to us. They freely acknowledged the mistakes that they had made, and they weren't trying to hide anything from us. And they committed to us that they understood the critical importance of not letting these mistakes be repeated. And as such, the committee concern brought forward a tightly controlled and constructed conditions, which we have just heard. I think that these applicants recognize that there's a significant level of scrutiny here. The police department is aware, the fire department is aware of the conditions of this application, and they're going to be vigilant to assure that their operational guidelines are met. We also would like to point out, for further discussion, that this application will also be reviewed, although it's being supported here at the local level, at the state level, by the Liquor Control Commission. And also, since we are approving this late in the year, that this license will be up for renewal in April, so this is a very short-term license essentially provided under strict conditions. So with that, I'll end my remarks and turn it over for any other comments or questions from the other commissioners.
Thank you, Commissioner Dean. Discussion by the board. Commissioner Busher.
So thank you. I want to thank the chair of the subcommittee for the explanation. As I read this, I was confused because it spoke to no partner's name being on a license, yet some of the very criteria mentioned that there have already been noticed or convictions. So these are any new.
Correct.
And so is it important to add that to the language? Because as I read it right now, I thought that there were going to be other people stepping in to sign the license agreement. I didn't understand it. And so I don't know how that plays out, but that was my only observation. And I wasn't sure about it, so.
Commissioner Dean?
I think I understand the question. So the conditions are any further, that there have been past instances of offenses, and the intent of the committee was to make sure that that did not happen again. Our feeling was that it was important for that to be established as a ground rule for securing the license for them to operate their business.
May I just, so as it reads, so it says no partner on the license shall be convicted, and if there are convictions, then I thought that was a disconnect between the language and the experience.
So in response, I would just say that this is a language that was given to us as offered by the city attorney's office, but it is for any future offenses.
Okay,
Thank you, Commissioner Dean.
thank you.
Councilor Bush, Commissioner Pine.
Thank you. I appreciate the difficult job that the committee had on this license, given the background of the applicants. And I want to just say that I think everyone does deserve a second chance. I think this is a case where we are giving folks a second chance who've had experience that has hopefully taught them a lesson. And I just want to be clear that we don't want to be looking back a year from now wishing we hadn't done this. I just want to be really clear so that the applicants understand there's no guaranteed right that you can get a license to sell alcohol. That's a privilege. We're granting that privilege. And the expectation is the applicants will take that seriously and understand that we're putting ourselves on the line as well. Not just the reputations, but the potentially of the safety of this community. So I think we have to be really cautious and be really candid about this. And I appreciate their candor when they spoke up about their background and what they hopefully have learned going forward. So I just want to state that.
Thank you, Commissioner Pine. Other comments or questions from the board? Hearing none, we're ready for a vote. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. And item number 3.02 now is a consumption permit application for Orlando's Bar and Lounge. Commissioner Dean.
I move to approve the 2018-2019 outside consumption permit application for BDM Enterprises LLC, doing business as Orlando's Bar and Lounge, 1 Lawson Lane, Suite number 10, with the following conditions. All city permit needs to be closed out, contingent upon fire marshal approval, with all standard conditions and with the conditions that were mentioned in the first, essentially the restrictive, no further offenses.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Dean. That's moved and seconded by Councilor Roof. Discussion from the board. Commissioner Nodell.
Thank you, President Wright. The time period is 4 p.m. to 2 a.m. Is that now kind of the norm for outside consumption permit downtown?
Commissioner Dean.
Yes, Commissioner Nodell, that's very typical of this area. It's consistent with the businesses that have liquor licenses and outside consumption permits directly adjacent to them.
Thank you.
Further discussion or questions from the board? Commissioner Jang.
Thank you, President. And this is a question for the chair. Now, looks like these are 3 partners, right? And now let's say if one of them is no longer part of the business anymore, right, down the future, do they need to come back and apply for the license again? Or do they just need to notify you? What's the process in there?
Commissioner Dean.
I believe that the standard is that they just need to notify us as the Liquor Control Board committee of any changes to their partnership agreement.
Commissioner Jang.
And can that be included in your provision that you provided in here, or it's just okay?
My understanding is that that's a standard condition, so it's already understood that that's part of the application, the conditions of the application.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Jang. Other questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the motion on the consumption permit application, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn is made, seconded by Councilor Roof. All those in favor of adjourning this meeting, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We have adjourned that meeting, and we are now ready to reconvene the regular meeting of the City Council at 7:30, which leads us right into tonight's public forum. Right now, we have just one person signed up to speak, and there, in case anyone else wants to speak, there are sheets over here in the corner table. If you would like to speak, write your name down and bring it over here to Lori in the clerk's office, and she will get it to me. So I will open the public forum at 7:31, and the first and only speaker right now is Norm Fisher. Mr. Fisher, come on up. Welcome.
Thank you. I don't want to wear out my welcome in speaking, and I didn't know I was going to be the only speaker, but I'm back on the mural because something has happened with the statement by Donald Stevens, chief of the Abenaki, and look very carefully at this, okay. I believe that this statement is the first blowback from the October 15th resolution. The most famous use of the concept of blowback came after George W. Bush's wretched invasion of Iraq. The blowback went on for years and years as the United States suffered because of this. In this case, I think the blowback was predictable. You go around throwing out the term racism without having an adequate basis for it, and there's going to be blowback. And his statement was, watch out when you accuse people of racism. I believe that, I'm not quite sure who he was thinking of, but I think that everybody involved in the humiliation of the makers of the mural are throwing out, basing their humiliation of the mural, the makers of the mural, on their concept of racism. But they've never proven any racism. I would suggest that people, if you have any doubt that rants against racism dominated the task force, go listen to what's on the public record. That's literally all that there is there. And because that's all there is there, it's very difficult to take Pierre Hardy down. Pierre Hardy is, in my view, somebody who was not only an extremely interesting artist, but somebody who understood the theory of art. In his marvelous statement on his art, you will find things that, if you compare them to the task force statement, are so much above anything that the task force said. For example, he talks about his experience in Vermont, working here for a year or so. He brings out his Quebec background. I happen to have lived in Montreal for 6 years. I know this man. I know strong intellectuals like Pierre Hardy. I've seen many of them. But his wonder, the wonder of this man, goes beyond where he lived and is working in Vermont. He understands art, not just his art, he makes it plain in a statement. He understands art itself. That is, he understands that art is imaginative. You have an imaginative vision, but anybody can perhaps have an imaginative vision that they think is an imaginative vision, but art requires sincerity. Above all, art requires sincerity, and Pierre Hardy gives a sincere statement of a man who is committed to his vision, who has the intellectual background to say, this is my art, I stand in front of it. I worked in Vermont for months and months and months. I moved to Vermont, and I am a proud Quebec intellectual and artist, and I am being trashed.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher. Paul Dame. Good evening, Mr. Dame. Welcome.
Thank you. So, yeah, my name is Paul Dame. I happen to be running for State Senate here in Chittenden County. I just wanted to stop by because although I'm not a Burlington resident anymore, Burlington was my first home. when I transferred up to UVM, and so it's always kind of has a special place in my heart. But I wanted to come before you today just to offer my help. I have served in the House Human Services Committee before, working on various treatment options for the opioid epidemic. And I'm just wanted to come before you, let you know that if elected to state senate, I'd love to hear from anyone here. I know there's a lot of conversation going on about safe injection sites and whether or not that's a good move forward. And I just want to let folks know I'm open to helping out there. I've also had a number of interesting conversations with some colleagues who are in the construction field on wastewater treatment facilities, and was made aware of a scenario in the city of Syracuse where they had a similar problem looking at trying to split their stormwater and their regular septic lines. And that's an expensive process. You got to dig up a lot of the city. What they did instead is they found a vacant parking garage or a vacant parking lot. Were able to put in a containment center where when they had storm surge, it would hold that when they were over capacity. And then after the storm had died down, they were able to pump that out. And the advantage that had compared to separating the lines is that when you did have a storm surge, you could still treat that because there's still potential problems with storm surge water getting into the lake. And that's another important issue I know here in Chittenden County. So again, if anyone wants to contact me, my name is Paul Dame. You can reach me at paul@pauldame.com. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dame. And with that, those are the only two speakers I have lined up to speak. So we will close out tonight's public forum and move to item number move to the consent item number 3, the consent agenda. Councilor Nodell.
President Wright, I move that we adopt the consent agenda as amended and take the actions indicated.
Councilor Nodell has moved the consent agenda, seconded by Councilor Hartnett. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the consent agenda and taking the actions indicated, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, we have passed the consent agenda unanimously, and I am now going to recess the regular city council meeting again for the purpose of allowing the mayor to move 2 meetings. And the first one would be the Board of Civil Authority, and then the next one is City Council with Mayor presiding, and then Board of Tax Appeals, actually.
Thank you, President Wright. Let me call to order the Board of Civil Authority at 7:38 p.m. And the first item on the agenda is the agenda, and welcome a motion to adopt.
Move approval of the agenda.
Thank you, President Wright. Seconded by Councilor Shannon. Discussion. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The agenda passes unanimously, and that brings us to item 2, the consent agenda. And I would welcome a motion to move that as well.
Move approval of the consent agenda and take the actions indicated.
Thank you, President Wright. Seconded by Councilor Shannon. Discussion of the motion. Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The consent agenda passes unanimously, and without objection, the Board of Civil Authority is adjourned at 7:39, and I will convene the City Council with Mayor presiding at 7:40, and would welcome a motion regarding the agenda. Councilor Shannon.
Move to adopt the agenda.
Second.
Excellent discussion. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? We have an agenda, and I now welcome a motion regarding the consent agenda. Councilor Shannon.
Move to adopt the consent agenda and take the actions indicated.
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Roof. Discussion. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously. And that brings us to item 3.01, Board of Registration of Voters for the term ending June 30th, 2023. At this point, I would open the floor to nominations for this appointment. Councilor Shannon.
Move to appoint Mohammed Jafar,
Excuse me. Thank you. Are there any other nominations?
or I nominate, sorry.
So, sorry, Councilor Shannon, that was a nomination. So we have one name, Mohammed Ibrahim Jafar has been placed in nomination. Are there any other nominations? Seeing none, we'll close the floor for nominations and we'll go to a vote. All those in favor of approving Mr. Jafar, please say aye.
Aye.
A strong majority has it, and I want to say congratulations to Mr. Jafar. Thank him for his application and his service. And with that, I will close the City Council with Mayor presiding, and this falls to me as well, President Wright. I will. So we close that meeting at 7:42, and we will convene the full Board of Abatement of Taxes at 7:42, and welcome Mr. Vickery to join us, and would welcome a motion on the agenda. Councilor Mason.
Thank you, Mayor Weinberger. I'd like to make a motion to adopt or amend and adopt the agenda as follows. Remove from the consent agenda item 2.04, request for abatement of taxes, Alan Richard Ginsler and Alan Cohen, 35 Cherry Street, and place it on the deliberative agenda as item 3.02 per Councilor Busher.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion of the agenda? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously. And that brings us to the consent agenda, the amended consent agenda. Are we ready for a motion on the consent agenda? Councilor Mason.
Thank you, Mayor Weinberger. I'd like to make a motion to take the actions indicated on the consent agenda, but noting for the record my recusal from item 2.03, which I did not participate at the subcommittee level either, due to a conflict with my work. Thank you.
All right, so we're going to divide the question.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, Councilor. Rare I get to make an administrative parliamentary decision here. We will divide the question and have a vote on the consent agenda with 2.04 and 2.03 both removed. Are we ready for, I think we need a second for that motion. Seconded by Councilor Shannon. We ready for a vote on the consent agenda, which is 2.01 through 2.08 with 2.03 and 2.04 removed. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Now we'll go to 2.03, which Councilor Mason has recused himself from, and have a vote on this consent item, or a motion on this alone first. Councilor Shannon makes...
Move to take the actions indicated on item 2.03.
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Nodell. Discussion. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that passes unanimously. And now we will start with 3.01, the deliberative agenda. 3.01. We'll go 3.01, 3.02, and then we'll deal with item 2.04, which has been removed. So, Councilor Mason, can you help us?
Yes, Mayor Weinberger. I'd like to, although I don't know we've deliberated, but I think the appropriate motion is to deny the abatement requested by Timothy A. Muir, 52 Cove Road, and I'd like the floor back for a brief explanation of this matter after a second.
Is there a second? Second by Councilor Shannon. The floor is yours, Councilor Mason.
Thank you. So for the council's benefit, this is the matter that had come up previously. There was a two-member subcommittee. There was a split decision among the two, Councilor Zhang and I, as to whether to grant or deny. It came up for consideration by the full board. There were some questions, and it requested, basically got sent back to the subcommittee to further inquire. We did have our meeting, the city attorney's office. So this is a home down in the north end on North Cove Road. was a requested refund of $3,000, I don't have the specific number, bear with me, $3,400 that had been paid. The stated basis at the time was a zoning dispute that had been a protracted dispute with the city regarding use of another property that this family owned. And in the first application, it was also disclosed that that property was under foreclosure. So it was sent back to the subcommittee. At that hearing, we heard from Kim Sturtevant and the city's attorney's office a few things that formed at least the majority. I won't speak for Councilor Shannon, but formed my opinion. The first was that there were continuing disputes with the owner in terms of the use of that property. The second was that the foreclosure on the other parcel had been completed. And the other piece was in terms of ability to pay, which was something the committee looked at. There was evidence that these owners, based on their tax returns, could afford, in fact, had already paid these taxes. And secondarily that they owned other property in the state of Vermont. So on that basis, the majority of the committee, moved forward to deny the abatement request. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Mason. The floor is open for discussion of this item. Councilor Pine, go ahead.
Pardon me, but by reading the decision, I actually couldn't decipher on what grounds the applicant thought they were entitled to this abatement. Could you just describe that, perhaps?
Sure. Unfortunately, the applicant did not elect to come to either of the decisions, so it was really based on the papers that were submitted. And I think the first was, I would say, a manifest unjustness was if I had to characterize the claim, that because they got into financial difficulty in part was the allegation based on the dispute with the city as to the zoning use violation. And then the committee of its own volition, because of the reference to the foreclosure, sort of took up the question about, is there an issue here about inability to pay? So those were the two bases that the committee sort of teased out of the paperwork that was submitted.
Is there any further discussion? Mr. Vickery.
Is the applicant here, and does he want to speak?
He's back there.
Okay. Mr. Moore, we'd welcome your attendance.
My name's Timothy Muir, 68 North Gold Road, and yeah, finally I get a chance to address some of this. It's been a fiasco from the beginning. I've been
Mr.
here,
Mayor,
this makes the
Mr. Mayor,
seventh time I've
two
been
things,
here.
Mr. Mayor, hold on. One, if we're going to hear you properly, you got to hold the mic pretty close to
Okay, well,
your,
let's
and then
get
I
to
also
it.
would ask you to speak respectfully to the board.
I have.
Okay.
I'm irritated because this is the seventh time I've had to come down here and I haven't accomplished anything. This is the first time I've got a chance to talk to anybody. You guys haven't notified me, and meetings have occurred where I haven't been there. And as far as qualifying, I land right smack dab in the middle of the conditions for a refund of the penalties and interest. So, anybody got any questions? Maybe I can clear it up for you. I don't know.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Muir. Did you want to address anything further, Mr. Vickery, before we proceed to councilor questions? No? Okay. Councilor Jang.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, Mr. Minier, thank you for coming here today. So the question that I have for you looks like you have been paying your taxes. Is that accurate?
Yes.
And looks like you asked for an abatement of the fees and also interest.
Yes.
And do you know, what happened? What happened in those fees and interest been accumulating? What happened? What was happening?
In 1985, I sat right here, and Ken Lerner was the zoning administrator. I applied for the first permit for 68 North Cove Road, and at the time I was asked if I planned on running my business out of there, and my answer was yes. And The minutes of those meetings mysteriously have disappeared. Ken Lerner and myself and others have searched, and they're gone. And this whole thing stems from that very beginning, where my file was tampered with in the city here, and it's been nothing but a horror show ever since. I paid a $10,600 fine, which I shouldn't have had to pay, zoning. You know, lopsided, 16 people against one. You know, I tripped up, I missed one hearing. This is over a 15-year period. And as a result of that, yeah, that's just the tip of the iceberg, not to mention the $150,000 elevation grant that the city collected from VEMA. I was the first one to apply, and after the money came in, it came in too. I was told they wouldn't talk with me because I had outstanding zoning violations. So I'm sorry if I'm not sounding like I'm all your buddy, because I'm not.
But looks like also, Mr. Minio, that you are currently not employed or working anywhere.
I've been disabled for about 9 years.
And you just stated that you paid over $10,000 in legal fees.
No, I paid a fine.
A
to the city
fine
of
to the
Burlington.
city.
Legal fees were about 8 times that. I didn't pay those either. Yep.
And, you know, looks like also it's not that you don't have the ability to pay, and you own other properties in the state of Vermont?
I paid that fine with some money I was awarded, and I got somebody ran into me, and I was sitting at a red light, and it blew out my shoulders, and that was a personal injury collection, payment that I got. That's what I paid it with. I did $10 million in 20 years, $500,000 a year, gross receipts, 20% profit on that. And for the last 8, 9 years, I'm living on $1,000 a month, my Social Security. That's like $1,000 a day to $1,000 a month.
Councilor Nadeau.
I don't have any money.
I have a question about the amount requested is $3,702.05. Is that correct? I guess I'm looking for the chair or someone who knows the file.
Yes, it's interest and penalties is what I was asking for.
Okay, can I just have an understanding of how we got to this number?
Okay,
Has this something that's been, and I'm asking the chair or staff or Mr. Vickery, is this a number, is this the interest and penalties that have accumulated over many years on an unpaid balance? Or how did we get to this number?
Yes, that's exactly what that is. We made a
I'm asking Mr. Vickery, sir, excuse me.
Mr. Murray, let's let Mr. Vickery respond.
My understanding is that it has been paid and it's asking for a reimbursement. It is the penalties and interest of unpaid taxes. Is that correct?
Over what period of time?
7 years?
Over
That's about
7
right.
years.
Something like that.
7 years.
I might add, there's one more thing. That clouded the decision.
Hold on one second. We'll come back in a second. You've had your questions answered, Councilor Nadeau. Or Councilor Mason, was there anything you wanted to add to that? Or?
Mr. Mayor,
I'd like
May I add
so
to
go ahead.
that?
Sorry, what was that? Okay. Mr. Muir, go ahead. You can add the point you would like to
Well,
make.
there was one comment in a letter that we received that we hadn't paid the last installment of those taxes due, and in fact, we paid those. We included those. We borrowed $9,000 something to pay that off. We're not going to exclude the last one for any reason at all. As a matter of fact, the city sent me $259 back instead of applying it like it should have been. And that clouded the decision at some point. I don't know when, but.
Okay. All right, thank you. Councilor Shannon.
Thank you. In response to Councilor Nodell's question, there is a letter in the packet, and it states in that letter, City Treasurer's Office calculated penalties and interest of $3,186.28. And immediately following that is the tax abatement request form requesting $3,702.05. So I am not sure that it's clear what that additional amount includes, because the request for $3,700 was made, received by the city on August 18th. And this letter with the 3186 is dated March 12th of 2018. I would also note that the specific claim by the taxpayer in the letter was that it was manifestly unjust.
Councilor Hartnett.
Thanks. Thanks for coming tonight. It's not easy to do. I appreciate it, and I think we have to have a conversation about this process in general, maybe going forward. But so, is the issue really that, I mean, you've asked for this, and it is a hardship to come up with the $3,400 is what you're saying, because it would be for me.
Borrow it.
Yes. And so have we
Country credit.
have we talked to, has the city made any engagement with you or talked to you about any payment plan? Or I don't think
Yes, but payment plan, what, we paid the whole thing off at the,
on the fees, on the late fees and the penalty.
at once, in one shot. We borrowed the money to do it, $9,000
Okay.
something dollars.
Yeah, I got it now. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, they paid. Got it now.
All right, so we have a motion before us. Would the chair or Mr. Vicker, you'd like to add anything, or we're ready for action?
So I just want to speak to process for a second. Mr. Muir, I'm not entirely sure what happened relating to notice. Certainly my understanding is that, there was an attempt to reach out to you.
It's been over a year.
No, understood, sir, but there were at least 2 separate hearings, where a subcommittee met and invited.
And how was I notified?
Mr. Murray, let me just finish, please.
Okay, I thought you were telling me I didn't show up for the meetings.
I'm just
questioning how come.
I'm addressing a question on process. These are unfortunately they're difficult things, I appreciate, certainly for you, but also for us, because, now, excuse me, this is the first opportunity we've had to speak to you. Ideally, it would have been, in a less, formal setting, intimate. We were presented, letters did go out informing you. I appreciate you may have not received them, it sounds like, of those 2 subcommittees. The hearings that we held, the difficulty, without getting into too much, is, we're struggling. There are limited bases upon which we as a board are supposed to be able to abate taxes. One of them is manifest unjustness. I appreciate the argument on that. The other is hardship. And I'm a little confused exactly. I appreciate what you're saying in terms of hardship, but there was also, we were presented with evidence at the subcommittee hearing that there were other properties or there were other assets that could be, that you had. If true, for me at least, that spoke to your ability to pay above and beyond the tax return, which was, provided to us. If that's not true, there is not other property, then I guess now would be the time to alert us as to.
What I have for other property consists of a woodlot out in Enosburg, up on the mountain, and I paid $142 an acre for it, and the other parcel is in Colchester on Valaket Court. I paid off the taxes on it, $3,200, and it's a swamp. Valaket Court, check it out. I got nothing, dude. If I did, I would have used it. That last bit of land that's it.
Understood. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilor Pine.
So, Mayor, there's enough confusion here that I'm just feeling that we owe it to the process to figure out some stuff here. I feel like there's a bunch of unanswered questions and sources of confusion. I'm not sure what the next step is, but perhaps a 5-minute recess to confer with the couple of committee members, and I'm not sure I don't know what the next step
Yeah,
is.
I'd grant a 5-minute recess, so let's do that and reconvene.
Thank you.
1 minute, so we're waiting for the full council.
Who's missing? Oh, no, Councilor Tracy.
Okay, thank you. We're going to reconvene the Board of Abatement of Taxes at 8:13. And are there any councilors who'd like to be recognized? We're ready to go to a vote. Councilor Harden.
I do have a question, and it's somewhat related. Other than this issue with the tax abatement, as far as your property down there, are you in good standing with the city? Do you have any current violations?
No.
You have none pending?
No. I'm out of there. I'm done. I completed Bill Ward came down, did a final inspection right before Christmas. It's been over a year now, and he said he couldn't give me the paperwork. I paid him. I gave him the check for the fine, and they checked all the work, made sure everything was right, everything was good. He said, yeah, I'll get it to you next week. Everybody's on Christmas vacation, and I'm sorry.
Councilor Mason.
Thank you, Mayor Weinberger. May I ask the city attorney to maybe weigh in on this, that Mr. Muir's response is inconsistent with what we were informed at the subcommittee, which was that there remained a continuing violation at this property, and that although an enforcement action had not been yet brought, there were discussions about how to resolve that issue.
Correct. That's the city's belief is that there are continuing violations, and that we have not yet initiated a public action, but are doing the preliminary steps towards that.
Thank you.
Councilor Jiang.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And City Attorney, again, can you please explain to us what type of violations we're talking about? Not current, but maybe the past.
Yes, the prior violations involved storage of property, outdoor, having a lot of things outside on the property, around the property that had to get cleaned up and moved, and eventually were. And after we went to court, and a fine was imposed, he did clean it up for a while.
Councilor Shannon.
It was reported to us in the committee that there were zoning violations, that they were rectified, and the property was cleaned up, as Attorney Blackwood said. But then all of this stuff came back, and there are ongoing zoning violations that my recollection is that's been going on for a year or more. I don't know if you have.
Excuse me, I can't take that. That is not, you have no proof of anything like that. I mean, I haven't brought anything back to that property. Everything that's there now was there when Bill Ward did his final inspection and left. I don't know what you're talking about. I haven't gotten any notices or anything. And if you're going to tell me I'm in violation and talk about it here, it'd be nice if I'd been notified about being in violation, because at this point I haven't been notified that I'm in violation, other than to hear you say it.
As I said, this is what was reported to the subcommittee, and this was part of our consideration. My understanding, and I understand the taxpayer has a different view on this, and I respect that. But the city has been working with him to try and get it cleaned up, and has been giving leniency if he were notified. I think that the fines would start accruing. So I think that the city has been trying to work with him to get it cleaned up. But if this committee needs more information, that's your
Bill Ward
decision.
needs
but
to be in
this
this
is the
conversation.
information that we
I'm
had.
sorry, but that's completely false. Bill Ward is the one that needs to be involved in this conversation, and Ken Lerner too. But Bill Ward is the one that did the final inspection. And there's nothing new today.
Mr. Mayor, I
I'm
think part of the
accused of being in
complication here
violation,
is
and
it.
I haven't been notified. I haven't been, notified that I've got a violation. But now you're talking to me like I'm in violation.
My understanding is you have not been notified of a violation there. My understanding also is there were attempts, I think one of the things we're struggling with here is there are attempts to handle this at a subcommittee level that mailings were made to your formal address and that you did not respond to. Can you
So
advise
from
us
now on,
this?
if you're going to notify me, certify it, please. I'm not going to take courier, mail. I want a certified letter. You can prove that you sent it to me, because statements are made by the city employees all the time that are just not true. I'm sorry.
So
I'm not going to play this game. That's not fair.
are you saying that you did receive them, but because they weren't certified, you just ignored them?
No. What letters I was sent, why don't you take those letters out right now and look at the dates and read the letters and see what dates they were sent to me. When did I get the letters? How about we take this into executive session, huh? How about we do that? Because I can't take it. This is ridiculous. This is wrong. I'm requesting it.
No, that's not, I don't think that it's available to us unless someone has a motion otherwise.
It should be.
All right, so
Throwing stuff around in a public forum.
if, Councilor Mason?
Sure. I just want to sort of bring us back to focus, and
Count on it.
under our code, excuse me, under the city charter, there are three bases upon which we can abate taxes. First is they're illegal, which is not a question here. Second is they are judged to be uncollectible, or third, that they're manifestly unjust. I appreciate there's a lot of facts and tension here because of issues that have nothing to do with the request before us. The committee, looking at those, the uncollectible and the manifestly unjust, made the majority of the committee felt that neither of those criteria had been hit. If this, full board of tax abatement feels differently, that would be the basis. To me, all the other stuff, unfortunately, is just noise. I appreciate there's a lot of emotion around that, but from my perspective, those factors are not relevant for purposes of our determination tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Mason. Would any other councilor like to speak? We have a motion. We're ready for an action. I appreciate Councilor Mason's point. If someone, I've not heard either an argument as to that meets one of those criteria against the motion. Would anyone like to make that at this point? Councilor Jang.
Yes, I think in this particular case, it is manifestly unjust for very many different reasons. One of them is currently we know that this person is disabled. We know that this person is in fixed income. New information did come to us saying that he has other properties. And in front of us, I think he explained that those properties don't have much of the value, which I think he could sell as well, right? But at the same time, if we look at the issue, the main issue, it's not about him paying his taxes, but it's about the fees and interest that been accumulating while he was under litigation with the city, right? I think that is enough to abate his taxes. And it will be considered as manifestly unjust. And he doesn't even live in the property, his own home. Looks like he explained to us that he been foreclosed. And foreclosed meaning you don't have enough money to pay your mortgage, and the bank will take it back. I think that would be enough for a person who with fixed income. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Jang. Just consulted with the city attorney and do believe that the same standard applies to penalties and interest as applied to the underlying. There isn't some distinction between the penalties and interest and the underlying taxes in terms of the rationale that must be found for waiving them. Councilor Nodell.
I'm sorry, Mayor, but I still have the same question I had before, which is how did this many this much penalties and interest accrue? Did it accrue because there was litigation between the city? I just need to understand that. Thank you.
Councilor Mason.
Sure, if I may field that. No, Councilor Nodell. These were unpaid because he did not pay property taxes on this parcel, penalties and interest accrued. The stated justification in the writing was I didn't pay them because I was fighting with the city on another parcel.
No, it's
that
the
was-
same parcel. Don't say it if it isn't true.
Forgive me if I've mischaracterized what I read, then
That's not true.
fair enough. My understanding is the penalties and interest, excuse me, accrued because of non-payment of property taxes on the parcel that we're talking about tonight.
Mr. Vickery, do you know what is the breakdown between, is there a lot of like compound interest in this number?
It's accrued over time, so I would say so, yes.
So of the amount, the bulk of it is the interest versus the penalties?
I don't have the separation.
You don't have the separation?
I could look that up.
We're consulting to see if we can find you the answer.
I mean, I don't want to kick the can down the road, but for me to vote on this, either deny it or not, it would help me to know how we got to this number. I don't understand where this number comes from. The $3,702.05. And I get it that they were supporting, I don't think we have that calculation anywhere in our backup paperwork.
Mr. Mayor, may I speak for a moment?
Is it on this point, or?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead, Councilor Shin.
The 3,700 number came from the taxpayer. The number that the city has, which I agree, we don't have the breakdown of how they came to it, was the 3186, just to be clear.
Okay, President Wright.
Can Mr. Vickery shed any further light on this? I mean, I think the difficulty here is that I would love to have seen the taxpayer have been at the committee level and had this vetted out and had some of the answers. Obviously, Mr. Muir is claiming things are not what the committee thinks they are, and I don't know what, but I wish this had been, and I understand that the committee certainly attempted to reach Mr. Muir, but
Can I say something?
Hold on.
Can Mr. Vickery, is there anything else you can shed light on this?
What I do know is that there were several attempts to contact Mr. Muir by letter, not certified letter, just in the same manner that occurs with everybody else. And there was 2 meetings, missed the first meeting, and then it came to the council, and the council moved it back so the committee would meet again. And there was no meeting until now. So this is his opportunity to speak. Unfortunately, it would have been better to have spoken more informally in a smaller group.
And how are taxpayers attempted to be contacted? There's calls, letters?
Usually just the letter. Yep. And then if they call, we'll give information,
Right.
provide information.
Thank you.
Councilor Harnett.
I guess it would be for Attorney Blackwell. Is it going to be impossible tonight to find that breakdown of between interest and penalty? I mean, can we get that, or is?
Can we get that tonight?
Yes.
I don't know. I think that's really a question for Mr. Vickery. Can you get that tonight?
I don't know if I can.
The reason I'm asking,
honest
not
with you, I
that we
don't
need
know
to,
that.
I'm not saying that we need to, but, you know, it might be prudent on our part to postpone action until we do get that number. I would put that out there. So I'm not.
Okay, would you like to make a motion to postpone, or?
I think I would. I'll make a motion that we postpone until we get clarification of the breakdown of really the 3,000 and 3,100 amount, and figure out which is penalties, which is interest, and then we can make a better decision. And I think we can all feel better about that. In the meantime, though, I would encourage you to have a better relationship with the city. And I know it's been unfortunate we haven't been able to contact you by mail, but maybe before you leave tonight, you'll give us some information where it's best able to contact you or how to contact you, because nobody likes to be in these situations. It makes us uncomfortable. I think it makes you uncomfortable, obviously, and nobody wants to be in that spot. And that's not the purpose of how we do business here at the City Council, right? We don't want this, and so I think lack of communication seems to be front and center here, and I'm not pointing the blame at either party, but I think we need to address that as well, and the amount as well. So I will make a motion to postpone.
Councilor Harnett, do you want to include in that motion date certain for the return, or?
When's our next City Council meeting? 12? No,
November 13th.
It's a Tuesday, so November 13th.
Okay, great. Is there a second for that motion? Second by Councilor Pine. Discussion? Councilor Nodell?
Just for clarification, we are looking for a breakdown on the Treasurer's Office calculated penalties and interest of $3,186.28. And I would also like a breakdown on the requested amount, which is a different number, $3,702.05, to get some sense of where did that number come from? Maybe from the materials that our taxpayer has provided. Is that consistent with your motion, Councilor Hartnett?
Yes, absolutely.
And
Thank you. Hold on.
Got to be recognized.
Councilor Shannon had her hand up.
Yes, I think, just to be clear, I think the only way to provide the answer to the $3,700 request is if Mr. Muir can give us that breakdown. And if Mr. Muir could provide, and I would just note that the address that we've been sending to is 68 North Cove Road, and if he can provide a formal address or formally communicate with the city, if there's some address that we should be mailing to other than 68 North Cove Road, I think the city is obligated to send to that official address, but you can certainly change that official address with the city if that's not the appropriate address.
Thank you, Councilor Shannon. Councilor Jang, would you like to be recognized?
yes, I wanted to also add to the motion to also have the breakdown when exactly those interest and fees been accumulating. Was it during the litigation against the city or not? Thank you.
Okay, I'll take that not as a formal addition to the motion, but a request for information that related to the motion. President Wright.
Just to agree with Councilor Shannon and to Mr. Muir, now there is some onus on you, as Councilor Shannon indicated, for you to make sure you work with the city to get us whatever information we can have so we can make as fair a decision as possible. Thank you.
Excellent. Mr. Muir, would you like to
That
recognize?
works. It's in the original packet, but I will copy that, and I will show it to you, and I'll show you what I mean by information not getting to where it's supposed to go when I drop it off down here. I'm sorry to have to do this again, but it's a fact.
Okay, very good.
How come
Any
this is
other
not in the packet?
councilors?
How come-
Would any other councilors like to be recognized?
Vetted it.
All right, we've got a motion on the floor to postpone until the November 13 meeting. All councilors in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. This item is postponed until Tuesday, November 13th.
Point of clarification, Mayor? So it's a
Yes.
motion to postpone with a request to the city assessor to provide the requested information.
Yes.
Thank you.
To the best of his abilities. There's a lot of things that came in there, but I think the sense of it was clear. Okay, that brings us to 3.02, which is request for abatement of taxes, Alan and Richard Gensler and Ellen Cohen at 35 Cherry Street. again, why don't we have the chair kick this off, and then if the taxpayer is with us, we'd be happy to hear from them as well. So, Councilor Mason.
Thank you, Mayor Weinberger. I'd like to make a motion to grant the, excuse me, the abatement request. I'm trying to find the number. In the amount of $453.58, and ask for floor back briefly after a second.
Second.
We're good?
Sorry.
Okay.
Second by Councilor Nadell.
Thank you, Mayor Weinberger.
Sorry. Councilor Shannon.
So this got
Head
pulled.
back
This
to
got pulled off consent, I think, for a discussion. This was a taxpayer that we often, which is an excuse or a justification. We often hear that, you know, I put it in the mail and it didn't get to you. However, what was unique, and this was the first time during my tenure, was that there was an acknowledgement by the clerk treasurer's office that lost mail, you know, was an issue under our new system. And based upon that, the committee felt that granting an abatement request was appropriate. Thank you.
Councilor Busher.
Yes, I did ask to move this to the deliberative because as the chair of the committee stated, this is the first time that I've ever seen us grant or recommend granting an abatement because something was lost in the mail. But it also is the first time that I've seen, and which upsets me somewhat, that the city treasurer's office recognized lost mail happens to be an issue. That was news to me. I don't know how frequently this happens. Up until this point, it was the responsibility of the taxpayer to get their payment in on time. And even though you had documentation from your checkbook or whatever, that was inadequate. So the documentation, I understand the rationale from the committee based on the department, the city, saying that we're vulnerable, that lost mail is an issue. And so I find that disturbing that that hasn't been shared with the full council. I find that disturbing that that's a rather large loophole for allowing anybody to potentially not meet a deadline. And I guess I would like some clarification regarding that statement.
Councilor Busher, today was the first time I'd heard that raised, and so I don't have an answer for you, but accept a promise to look into it and find out what's going on.
I just wanted to end with the fact that because the city acknowledges that the city or that the system that we've put in place could allow this to happen and that we acknowledge it has happened in the past, I'm going to break from my hardcore tradition of saying no, and I feel lousy about it when I have to say no, but I will support the recommendation that the committee has put forward to abate based on the statement that the city made. Thank you.
Councilor Hartnett.
I would like just to bring some attention at the committee level. We have done this before, actually, with proven documentation from the post office with a correct postmark. We have. So
that's different, though.
It is, but you saying lost mail. And so we have granted on lost mail before, right? That it might have not have been the clerk's treasurer's issue, right? It was an issue at the post office, but it's lost mail, however you want to look at it. And so for me, lost mail is lost mail. And unfortunately, if it was, it's a problem in the clerk's office this time, we have granted abatements on lost mail before with documentation from post office and with feedback from the post office. So I don't think it's actually really fair to say that we haven't obeyed it in the past based on lost mail. I think we have. I was on the committee when we did it, and so I think we're kind of in the middle here a little bit. I think it is kind of the same thing. Lost mail is lost mail, and so I don't think this is something new.
Councilor Shannon.
Thank you. In the committee discussion, It was acknowledged by the clerk treasurer's office that there has been some problems with lost mail, but part of that conversation was also that I know in the South End, on our front porch forums, we have had chronic reports of people not getting their mail. In my own neighborhood, mail was only being delivered 4 days a week at one point. I have called Senator Leahy's office and been working with them to try and figure out what is the problem with our mail. I myself had a self-addressed registered letter that didn't get to me, and I finally called down to the post office to find that my registered letter addressed to me, and I know my zip code, was in the dead letter office. So that experience has affected my thinking about lost mail, and I do think that the taxpayer has to meet a threshold of persuading us that that's really what happened, and we tried to do that. But I do think we have a problem in the last 2 years that we haven't seen much before.
Councilor Jang.
Thank you. So I think for this specific issue, if I remember correctly, this house owner also owns a property in New York, or she lives there. And I do believe that we did ask to provide a proof that he did actually send it in the mail. We did not take action, or we did it like temporarily until we received that proof. And she sent it to the office, reason why it was abated. So I think for this one, she provided a proof. But I do agree. Anyone can say, I lost the mail. Anyone can say. But until you provide a proof that you did send a check to the city or to Albany, then I think we need to be flexible a little bit. Thank you.
Okay, Councilor Nadal.
May I ask the committee how they were convinced that this individual did send the check in the mail? Because you can afterwards change your check register.
Yes, sorry.
Councilor Mason.
Thank you, Mayor Weinberger. You're correct. I mean, there had to be a semblance of trust, and we did ask for a check register, and we're provided one with an appropriate date. So, do we know for sure that she didn't fill it in after? We don't know that, but it was our belief that the taxpayer was accurate.
I'm not going to be voting for this. Thank you.
Okay, are we ready for a vote?
Okay.
Looks like we are. We'll go to vote. So the motion again is to grant the abatement, correct? Yes. So a yes results in the abatement, and no stops it. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. No. All right, we'll go show of hands. All those in favor of the abatement, please raise your hand. The clerk have the... And opposed, raise your hands. I believe the motion fails on a vote of 9 to 5. Is that
Passes.
or passes on 9 to 5? Sorry. Okay. Thank you. We'll move to item 2.04, which was pulled from the consent agenda. This is a request for abatement of taxes. Alan, so sorry. Is this the same?
I think we just did that.
Okay, sorry.
We're done.
So we're done. All right. The clerk, I didn't realize it was already amended. So, thankfully, the Board of Abatement of Taxes is adjourned at 8:41 p.m. I believe, President Wright, I've completed my chairing duties.
You ready to turn it back over, Mr. Mayor?
I am. More than ready.
All right. So we are back on reconvening the regular city council meeting at 8:42. Holy cow. And we are back on the deliberative agenda. Item 4.01 is an indoor entertainment permit application for Orlando's Bar and Lounge. Counselor Chair of the License Committee, Counselor Dean.
Thank you, President Wright. I would move the approval of the 2018-2019 indoor entertainment permit application for BDM Enterprises, doing business as Orlando's Bar and Lounge with the following conditions. All city permits need to be closed out, contingent upon fire marshal approval, with all standard conditions. And no partner on the license shall be convicted of a misdemeanor or felony criminal charge. If any partner of the license is convicted of a misdemeanor or felony criminal charge, BDM shall be subject to an immediate suspension or revocation hearing before the local control subcommittee. If any partner on the license receives a misdemeanor or felony charge, BDM Enterprise must disclose the criminal charge to the local control subcommittee within 14 days of that charge. These conditions apply to their first-class restaurant, bar, liquor license application, their outside consumption permit application, and their indoor entertainment permit application.
Second.
Moved by Counselor Dean, seconded by Counselor Roof. Any discussion? So we have the application with the conditions. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Counselor Dean? Motion?
No, I think we're on to 4.02.
4.02.
President Wright.
Yes. The motion to, yeah, that's right, we're done. I'm getting confused like Mayor Weinberger was. Thank you. We're concluding that item, and item number 4.02 is a report from CCRPC. Good to see you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Andy Montrell. I'm your representative to the Regional Planning Commission, and we're pleased to be here tonight to present our annual report. I'm here with Charlie Baker, who's our executive director, and in our report we provide a lot of information for you, and Charlie, I think, will be going into a little bit more detail on some of the provisions that are in there. But before I turn the microphone over to Charlie, I just want to say that our Regional Planning Commission, it's a body that's made up of a number of different member municipalities in Chittenden County and a few other partners. And we're really fortunate on the commission to have such a strong staff that we have. Charlie's here, representing the staff, but he's one of many people there. And we couldn't do the work on the commission without the kind of support that they provide to us. And I think we are all, the whole community, all of the county benefits greatly by the support that we get from our really outstanding staff. So I sit here and say thank you to Charlie and the rest of them. But as a commission, I think we have a really strong group of people who really look out for the best interests of our county, of our region. It's a balance of the needs of all the different municipalities in the county, which sometimes there are conflicts between them, but I think as a board overall, we work really hard to get those resolved. And I think just about all of our actions are almost always unanimous. And with that, I will turn it over to Charlie to go over some details he may have, and then welcome any questions that you may have. Thanks.
Thanks, Andy, and I hope I don't owe you any money for that compliment, but thank you. So in the report, we try to check in with every municipality every year, usually in the fall when you're starting to think about budget cycles. But very much as a customer service call, this is a great time for me to get any feedback about how we're doing, any things we could do better in providing service to the city. I go to every select board in the county and have this conversation. So this one's a little more formal in circumstance and bigger, but the conversations are always good, and I welcome any feedback that you have. The first page gives you some background about what the Regional Planning Commission is. As Andy said, it is a board made up of all the municipalities of the county plus other representatives from different sectors, including primarily transportation, where we get a lot of our funding. Our budget is mostly federal and state dollars. You'll see there's a little discussion about how much the municipalities kick in for dues and the amount that we are able to leverage that, a 14-to-1 return on the local investment. Down at the bottom, you see your representatives on our committees, and I do want to thank you for having Andy, sorry Andy, this goes the other way too, for appointing Andy to the board. It's been really important for our board to have either sitting or former members of the city council or select boards, just to have that relationship and knowledge of the kinds of things that you think about and how you think and the relationships. And so it's very important, and we appreciate it. Andy's our past chair, and so was on chairs the nominating committee and other services, so I appreciate that very much. The second, third, and going on to the fourth page, because you have the longest list of services we provide, is things that we did specifically with the city. And so those include projects that you probably have heard updates from time to time, mostly from Chapin probably, but the Rail Yard Enterprise Project, the Winooski Avenue corridor study is in its early stages. We did some work with traffic signal timing on Shelburne Street. Finished scoping the Winooski River Bridge. Hopefully you have heard or will hear about that very soon with the city of Winooski. I think we have a good strategy there. The Colchester Ave, Riverside Barrett, Mill Street intersection. Thank you to those of you that participated in that process. I'm not going to read all these, but Burlington Amtrak overnight storage, working on finalizing that report. Brownfields, pre-disaster mitigation, stormwater planning, the byways program. We did some GIS story mapping work with your Parks and Rec department. Happy to just take a pause because there's a lot of different projects listed there, many of which I didn't touch on. Any questions, feedback for us on those specific projects that we worked with the city on? I'm careful what I asked for, I know.
Councilor Pine?
I'd like to hear about how you keep up to date the documents, which in planning there's a tendency at some places to plan and then move on to the next plan, and I want to know how you're keeping this live, like the ECOS plan. That's an example of something that I want to make sure that those analyses are being updated and brought into real time so that there's some recognition that the needs change, and we need to be informing the member municipalities about those changing needs and how their policies can advance those goals or not.
Yeah, a couple thoughts on that. One is our plan documents get updated every 5 years. We just updated the ECOS plan this past spring. Actually, I think that's in the next section I'll talk about. But, and we kind of have those conversations. Many of those conversations are with municipal staff about, things that are changing and the priorities, the big picture vision stuff, I would say is primarily not changing. I think there's a very strong support in the county for smart growth efforts, for multimodal transportation. I mean, a lot of the things I think that the city talks about here, clean water issues, energy, getting to the energy goals. And so I think a lot of our focus has also been not just on updating the plans, but how do we actually implement those plans? And so we're trying to do what we can to support implementation activities as well, and not spend all of our time updating plans. I don't know if that's fair.
Perfect.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you, Councilor Pine. Councilor Busher?
So, thank you. I was looking forward to this report, and I have a question for you. So it's going to be specific to one project that I've been involved with, which is the Colchester Avenue, Riverside, Barrett Mill intersection. So we've spent a lot of time on that scoping study, and there were long-term, as you've stated, and short-term alternatives. And one of the things that came out of that short-term was that because of the safety issue, there should be a pedestrian crossing at Barrett. So this is a specific item, and I'm just not clear. I felt that I'm not clear how that's handed off to get implemented from regional planning. Even though I'm a part of that committee, I guess I thought it had life from that committee, but it has really, we've had to really stay on top of that and really work with the Department of Public Works to actually make that happen, even though this was identified a long time ago as a priority because someone was actually killed at that intersection. So I'm not sure about that. Can you just add some clarity? Because I think that would really help us understand how regional planning and the committees and the groups that all of us get to participate in, depending on where we live, how those short-term agreed improvements get passed off to the community, and who's supposed to watchdog and make sure they happen? Could you touch upon that, please?
I could. So I think that's the biggest challenge with our work, to be honest. And I think it's some of why I maybe had a little bit of reaction to Councilor Pine's question about, I'll call it over-planning and over-promising and under-delivering. So that's a concern that I have generally. So I've been trying to coach and work with staff of like, let's make sure, particularly when we say they're short-term recommendations, is there somebody to hand them off to? It's typically either the municipality, and sometimes it's VTrans when we're talking about these transportation projects, but is there really ownership and the ability to carry through on that? I'm not going to say that system works perfectly all the time, and there's certainly a lot of competing demands for implementation dollars that I know you're all too familiar with. So it's a question of, even though locally that may be the number one thing to do, as that gets mixed into the pot of what gets done citywide, I'm sure there's a lot of competing interests that may not be, we thought it was going to happen in a year or two, it may not happen for 3, 4, or 5 years. So I think that's just a reality of scarce resources to address priorities that come out of very localized projects. Does that help?
It does, and I guess my only comment is that I would request that when you form a new committee, that you make sure that people like me who maybe aren't on committees all the time become aware of their responsibility to kind of oversee those short-term recommendations in their own community, so there's more ownership and more eyes trying to get that job done. But thank you.
Yeah, no, and we could probably do a better job of watchdogging those too.
Thank you, Councilor Busher. Councilor Jang.
Thank you, President. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Mr. Montrell. And my question is very specific, is about the public health. Based on my understanding, all your work was about, the roads and bridges, but looks like you guys go above and beyond of that. And I wanted you to please explain, if it's possible, to tell me specifics here in Burlington and maybe in Winooski about drug use prevention, as well as, if any, you have any connection with the community COMSATs in Burlington, and how do you guys work together around the opiate addiction?
So let me talk about the opioid and COMSAT first. I think, and I've been a participant in the Chittenden County Opioid Alliance, and I think working with the city and the mayor very closely and the chief on those efforts. I think largely we were playing a little bit of facilitation and fiscal management role, and not a direct service role in that work. So a little bit more of a support role. In terms of broader prevention issues, and I'm going to forget the name of the organization, but you have a partnership for prevention.
Burlington Partnership.
Yeah, Burlington Partnership for Prevention, thank you. I should know that. And there's a contract from the health department in Chittenden County, and they've contracted with us. They've turned us the lead agency. We then subcontract out to those partnerships. So there's one in Burlington, one in Milton, and provide funding and some oversight of their work and some assistance. Mostly the assistance has been in the form of GIS mapping and analysis work. So they've been mapping like where are the liquor stores or the stores that sell cigarettes, and trying to help that local partnership address issues around advertising to kids and things like that. So those are kind of the two areas specifically where we've been focused on public health. I think there's a lot more conversations to be had there about how transportation integrates with public health, et cetera.
And also when we talk about public health, it's not necessarily all the time about drugs and substance abuse, but it's more also about sugar, about health, about, healthy lifestyle. But do you see a correlation about more biking into the cities and also just promoting active lifestyle?
Yeah, sorry, that's where I was really going with that conversation, is I think we do have a greater role in the public health conversation, which is really about community design and designing healthy communities with sidewalks and bike paths and safe bicycling, access to transit. I mean, again, all those things that we talk about when we talk about housing policy and good community development. But then we have other things, where there are food deserts. How far away does somebody have to go to access healthy food? I think those are all questions of community development that we are glad to help with.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jang. Other questions from the City Council? Hearing none. Thank you very much, Mr. Baker and Mr. Montreal, for that report from the CCRPC.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate, and sorry you had to wait so long.
No problem.
Hearing no objection, we will waive the reading, accept the report, and place it on file. Moving ahead now to item number 5, which is committee reports. Any committee chair who would like to report to us on committee activity? Councillor Pine.
I just wanted to report that the Community Development and Neighborhood Revitalization Committee was in planning to meet jointly with the Ordinance Committee tomorrow, but in light of the recent events in Pittsburgh and the community vigil that will happen, that we decided to postpone that meeting so folks could attend that. We encourage folks to attend.
Thank you, Councillor Pine. That makes sense. Councillor Tracy and then Councillor Dean.
Thank you very much, President Wright. As part of the motion that was sent to the TUC regarding the reuse sites, we had a meeting last week and discussed the reopening of the reuse sites and potentially some strategies to hopefully deal with that need here in Burlington. One idea that I thought was particularly good that Councillor Busher brought to the table was that of doing so on a volunteer basis or having volunteers staff those sites. Other issues that were explored were issues of how we communicate to the public around availability of those resources and how they might be able to do that. We also directed the CSWD representative, Mr. Green, to bring that feedback and the strong desire of Burlington to see those sites reopened to the CSWD. And what we're working on now is to understand accurately what actually happened at the subsequent CSWD meeting that night, such that we can understand what exactly has happened at that committee level. Thank you.
Thank you for that update, Councillor Tracy. Councillor Dean and then Councillor Hartnett.
Thank you, President Wright. I would just like to make the council aware of the fact that the licensing committee has been addressing and beginning to address the issue of the central peddling district in the downtown. Specifically, we had a suggestion for providing additional food truck options for food trucks within the central peddling district. I think this excited some concern on the part of the council. So there, at our last meeting, I shared a resolution with the other members of the licensing committee, which discusses a process to actually look at their central peddling district, which has not been touched in 20 years, with a special ad hoc committee, suggested ad hoc committee. We're still investigating, and I'm getting input from my fellow committee members, but we're hoping to bring this before the council at our next meeting on the 13th. I did share that with Councilor, the text of that with President Wright as well for his input.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Dean. Councillor Hartnett.
Yeah, update from the PAC. We actually got a lot going on. First want to touch on a town hall meeting, which will be here on December 6th. And it's probably the second step in the auditorium. And so where we're at there, what the process looks like, and more community input. So that will be December 6th, a town hall style meeting. That will be the next PAC meeting, and that will be the only item on the agenda that night. So it'll be right here in Contois. So I would encourage everybody to come to that and see where we're at in that process. Two other things I'd like to mention. We're in, as we believe it or not, getting close to New Year's Eve, and City Arts is kicking off their New Year's Eve event, which is going to be called Highlight. You're going to hear a lot more about that in the coming weeks. I think there's kind of a grand kickoff on November 15th, hopefully a big press conference. But City Arts has worked hard. It looks like it's coming together fairly well. It should be a pretty exciting night, and I think we're very fortunate to have such a great arts programming in our city, and I think Highlight is going to be a big success here on New Year's Eve, and I think that's a tribute to our values here in Burlington. And the third thing I would like to mention is just at our last PAC meeting, and then also attended a press conference as well, but Oakledge for All presented also at the PAC. If you guys aren't familiar with this program and what it's all about, I would encourage everybody to take a look at this. It was an exciting day down at Oakledge. I haven't been to a press conference like that in a long time. It was freezing cold, but to hear the speakers that spoke that day from their heart and to hear their personal stories of how it affects their families was something like I haven't heard really in a long, long time, and it was just really stuck with me. And I think it just another benefit of who we are here in Burlington, and I hope that we can all get on board and being engaged in that. It was unfortunate that their grand opening was canceled Saturday due to weather, but this is a group that is determined. I know the city is partnered with them. The Parks Foundation is kind of partnered with them, and it's going to be, when they're all completed, it's going to be an amazing, amazing park that we can all be proud of. So thanks.
Thank you, Councilor Hartnett. Councilor Roof.
Thank you, President Wright. Public Safety Committee has set a date to meet, which will be next month on the 15th at 5:30. We'll probably be in room 12. We'll take up two items. First being the encampment removal policy that was just released by the city attorney's office to me, I think today actually, or yesterday. So now that that policy is out, I'm going to share it widely, and we're going to have about a little more than 2 weeks for that policy to breathe in public, and then we'll have our time with it at the Public Safety Committee. We'll also be looking at a proposal for how to move forward with improving access to public bathrooms in the downtown on that meeting as well.
Thank you, Councilor Roof. Any other councilor, any other committee chair? Hearing none, we'll close out item number 5, and item number 6 is City Council on General City Affairs. Any city councilor? Councilor Hartnett, and then Councilor Busher.
Yes, a big shout out to the Burlington boys soccer team. A big game tomorrow at CVU at 3 o'clock, semifinals. So we'll be rooting for them. I plan on attending and then coming right here afterwards to the vigil. But I do want to recognize they've had a great season. They were the 13th seed in the state, and they've knocked off the 4th seed, and they've knocked off the 5th seed. And tomorrow's big game is against the number 1 seed, CVU. And so we're rooting for the BHS boys soccer team, and we wish them luck.
Thank you, Councilor Hartnett. Councilor Busher.
Thank you. First of all, I wanted to note something that was in the consent agenda. It was the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting Award that went to our treasurer's office, and so I wanted to congratulate everyone in that office, but certainly the Chief Administrative Officer, Beth Anderson, and the Director of Financial Operations, Rich Goodwin. So I just wanted to acknowledge the good work that all of you have done, and that it must be very satisfying for you to have external eyes recognize that work. And so anyways, congratulations. The second thing has nothing to do with congratulations. I just want to report something that's going on in my neighborhood. And it has to do with, most of it's going on in the community garden that is in Ward 1. And there's been significant vandalism, destructive vandalism. We have a shed that has tools in it, and someone actually ripped the wooden door and lock off, and I don't know how they did this, but, and then through that and had access to tools. I don't know what was taken, but some of those tools were used to dig up people's treasured really harvest of leeks and things that take forever to grow. Just mean-spirited things, breaking plants and stealing hay. And it's something that's really hard to understand who does this. It doesn't seem to come from a point of need. It seems to come from a point of greed and destruction. And sometimes I question whether the people that are doing it are intoxicated when it's just vandalism. And sometimes when they're taking vegetables, I don't know what their purpose is. So I just wanted people to just be aware that people are on my street are trying to watchdog and trying to figure out who could possibly be responsible for these acts. And if you're watching and you know that you or someone you know has taken action like this, I just want people to remember that if this was your stuff, no matter what it was, computer, whatever, you don't want someone destroying it. So please be considerate. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Busher. Councilor Pine.
Just want to point out that the city has adopted the, I believe it's the city, perhaps it's the marketplace, but I think they're called green ride bikes. They're very green and they have their own bike racks. And as a regular bicyclist, I'm really excited to see this service and this provided as a service. But there's 12 racks out there for those bikes, and there's 3 for the rest of us who just ride regular old bikes. And so I don't know how we can more equitably distribute, but the prime parking in front of City Hall is taken entirely by those bikes. And I was told by someone while I was putting my regular bike on that rack that it wasn't intended for regular bikes. And so it's as though the one bike is now more important than the other, and I think we ought to just treat them all the same, which is great access to great facilities for everyone. And right now it's the latest, shiniest object are the green rideshare bikes, and they're definitely at a higher, the hierarchy is suggesting that they're more important than regular bikes.
We don't need any discrimination against real bikes. Thank you, Councilor Pine. Councilor Jang.
Yes, so this is one issue that is happening in the New North End, and I'm pretty sure maybe the New North End councillors have heard about it. And if you know Franklin Square, behind Franklin Square, there is this green area, a very beautiful wetland, beautiful trees, and we know that the Youth Conversation Corp and also some UVM students did a wonderful job cleaning it up. So a constituent of mine, Jim Carrier, who's a wonderful guy, been putting it on Front Porch Forum and also sent us an email. But the issue that I come across is sometimes you don't know what the city owns and also what Burlington Housing Authority owns. We know when there were problems about lights, it was fixed by Burlington Electric Department, and we know also that road will be, but that specific area, I don't know where to start. Should we talk to Burlington Housing Authority, or should we talk to Parks and Rec, or I don't know exactly what city department we need to talk to try to solve this problem. And most importantly, for this to not happen again, not only to clean it up, but how do we make sure we monitor that beautiful green area? So that's a question of mine. And the second thing that I wanted to talk is November 6th, I'm pretty sure we all know, let's all make sure that our constituents will show up strong and vote. Yes, let's all work together on that.
Thank you, Councilor Jang. Councilor Paul? No? All right. Any other city councilor? Hearing none, we'll conclude that item. And number 7 is city council updates. Not much here, just reminding people that there is a work session planned for our next city council meeting from probably 6 to 7 on the rules issue out of charter change. So everybody make sure that you've read the proposed rule changes before we have that work session and be prepared to discuss. Lastly, I did plan on mentioning what Councilor Jang mentioned, and so I will just reiterate. A week from tomorrow is Election Day. Please vote, number 1, and also remember, if you have absentee ballots, mail them in. Time's getting short. You can come to City Hall and vote in person still, right up through this week. So we want everybody to take the opportunity to vote and, do the right thing and vote. And there's no subliminal message there either. So with that, I'll conclude that item and go to item number 8, which is the mayor on general city affairs. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, President Wright. Appreciate the chance to update the council and the public on a number of items. Thank you, Councilor Hartnett, for mentioning the Oak Ledge for All event. It was an exciting event marking the completion of phase 1, of what is really envisioned to be a 2-phase project. So there are 3 new pieces of parks, playground equipment that have been installed and that are usable by the public that are fully accessible pieces of equipment. They are certainly usable for children and individuals with mobility issues, but they're also usable by all members. It's really a universal design and something that everyone, I think, would enjoy. I encourage councilors, if you're down in that area, check it out, because I think it is important to see this and understand phase 2 is going to be a substantially harder phase. It's coming next. It's going to be a more expensive phase. It's going to require a substantial amount of private contributions the way it's been envisioned. And good news, in response to the press conference last week, we got a $50,000 check today. So it seems that fundraising is off to a good start. But more to come on that playground. It really is a unique resource within really the region's parks offerings at this point. We hope to make it more so. Had the chance to check out the Conan Makerspaces last week, and this is another interesting thing happening in the city, which is quite exciting. I think often when change comes, there's initial concern about it, and I can think of a number of times in the South End where we have had change, whether it was Specialty Filaments closing shop or Resource moving out, real questions about what would happen next. Steve Conant, if you have not had a chance to be in that building yet, I'd encourage people to check it out. It's really quite a remarkable collection of organizations and businesses that are there that he is curating very carefully, and I think that really has the opportunity to fuel a whole nother generation of innovation down in the South End. And I share with the council, it feels to me that this is part of a broader trend that's happening, where we have a really new and kind of interesting ways of business, different types of businesses being collected together in different types of workspaces and adding value as a result of these configurations. What is happening at the former Blodgett site is on its way to a similar transformation under the name now of Hula Burlington, which there is a website up people might want to check out. And what is being talked about as part of the Cambrian Rise project, which is also an accelerator type workspace. These feel different to me than a lot of our kind of past workspaces in Burlington, and it feels like an interesting and positive economic development trend. More good news with the council's support. We did announce last week that the low barrier shelter located here in the downtown is opening for a 4th season, and this time it will not close until June, which is a first. Up until now, we have always closed in early to mid-April. There was concern about that last year, and with the additional funds in the city's budget this year, that season will be extended. It will also be measured. We'll be really looking to see whether having this facility open for a longer period of time becomes another important tool in the city's offerings when we are engaged with the homeless population and in a variety of ways. So this is welcome news. We really appreciate the work of our partner, the Community Health Center of Burlington, which has now this will be the 3rd year of their managing this effort. The atmosphere that they create there, the way in which they've managed the program has been extremely effective. There is a role for volunteers who would like to help support this effort. There are opportunities to help cook warm meals that are provided throughout the the cold weather season. And you can find more information about that online. Couple last items. I do want to compliment the Parks, Recreation, and Waterfront team. They put a lot of creativity into this weekend event, the Halloween bike ride, which just took place yesterday. It's the 9th year that this has happened. Really wouldn't happen, I don't think, without incredible personal energy put into this by John Adams Cullitz. This year was the best edition yet. There may be controversy about bike issues around the city in a variety of ways. There is no controversy that the best costume was a New North End costume. You got to check it out online. Liam Griffin had a scale replica of Luke Skywalker's ship, which took down the Death Star. It was quite complete with a R2D2 version of Milo in the backseat. It was quite something. Great event, and it's really quite something the way the community's responded. There's sponsorships. Felina's was behind it and helped feed everyone. It was a great event. There's another great event happening Thursday up the street, up College Street. If you haven't been by College Street recently, next time you go by, you'll see a huge change when you get to what used to be the Ethan Allen Club. It's not there anymore, hasn't been there for a few weeks, and a new building is beginning to rise from the site. The ceremonial groundbreaking is taking place this Thursday at 11 a.m. for the new YMCA facility. This is a project decades in the making in many ways, real achievement for the organization that after years of work, they have gotten this project off the ground, and anyone who can is welcome to be part of the event on Thursday morning at 11 a.m. at the site, the former Ethan Allen Club up on College Street. And finally, I guess it has been noted a couple times, but I do want to add my thanks and appreciation to the Clerk Treasurer's Office, which has been working hard for weeks now for the upcoming election. It does appear that, as has been the trend in recent years, more and more people are taking advantage of these early voting opportunities, which is what we hoped they would do and what they were designed to do, but it takes a lot of work from the Clerk Treasurer's Office for that actually to succeed, and we thank the whole team that's making it happen, and remind everyone they have a week left to come in and vote here at City Hall up through the Monday before the election. And then again, for just, I think, the second or third election, we will have same-day registration at the polls on Tuesday, again, for this election. So if you have not registered yet, that is not a problem. You can do so right up through Election Day. That is what I've got, President Wright.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Are you sure you don't have one other item you'd like to mention?
Well,
you know you want to.
Since you mention it.
Has it got to do with...
Go ahead.
Congratulations go out to the 2018 Boston Red Sox for their successful run through the playoff. For those, I think Dan Shaughnessy really kind of captured it in the article this morning. He said for individuals of a certain age, Red Sox fans of a certain age, this is like being in an alternate universe. For those of us who were formed prior to 2004, this is a welcome change, and this team was really quite something special. I think I'd have to say, President Ray, I think this goes down there as one of the great all-time teams from any franchise, without a doubt.
I just said you should mention it, Mr. Mayor. I gave you an opening to mention it. Yes, it was 0 for my lifetime up until 15 years ago. Now, okay, anyway, I know you were at game 1 and that was exciting, so I wanted to give you the opportunity to mention that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Okay, with that, we will conclude that. And item number 9 is a communication from City Attorney Blackwood regarding an executive session on collective bargaining. City Attorney Blackwood.
Yes, I'd like to give you an update on some collective bargaining, and so we could. I also have a quick update on one of our litigation matters that I'd like to add at the end of that. So we could use a motion to make a finding that premature disclosure of the information that's going to be conveyed and to obtain legal advice would put the city at a disadvantage.
Councilor Mason?
I'd like to make that motion, President Wright.
Motion made by Councilor Mason, seconded by Councilor Shannon. Any discussion? All those in favor of the findings, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? With that, Councilor Mason, the second motion.
Thank you, President Wright. I'd like to make a motion that based on that finding, we go into executive session. Is there any action coming out, or will this be the end of our?
No action expected.
So with that, Councilor Wright, I'll defer to you as to whether to let Channel 17 go or keep them around.
City Attorney Blackwood, do you have any expectation how long this might take? Is it an update? I know it's probably hard to tell, but.
It's long. It's not like 1 minute long. It's more than. It's a longer update than that.
Longer than a minute.
It's a more substantive update.
Okay, all right. So we'll clear, seconded by Councilor Shannon, and all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? We'll move into executive session. And